Hey everybody, welcome back to Pure IP Coffee Club. Excited to get into this one. Aaron and I were both together at a Redmond event a little while ago, and various conversations were had in the bar. Some of them around Teams, some of them not around Teams. But one of the conversations we had was around kind of Teams phone in manufacturing and in unusual use cases. And Aaron and the team have had quite a lot of experience on doing that. So we're going to get into that conversation. But first of all, Aaron, why don't you just kind of give us a little bit about yourself and your role?
Yeah, sure, certainly. So, Aaron Latessa here. Pleasure to be on. I've been with BCM One for going on 8 years now in a variety of different roles and capacities. I'm obviously now working alongside my solutions engineering team, really evangelizing the services around Pure IP. So over the last year, I've really kind of sunk my teeth into the Microsoft platform itself, Pure IP's connections into the Microsoft platform, sort of how we go about delivering services, and generally expanding my knowledge on what the platform can do and the industries and verticals that it serves and how it serves them. I think that's really important and probably something that we're going to talk about today, right?
Yeah, definitely. And Teams phone, we tend to often default to the knowledge worker type scenario, and yes, it's got some amazing capability there, but it's more interesting to kind of think about some of the more unusual cases. We have things like healthcare, manufacturing, Frontline, where you're pushing it a bit beyond just cloud to cloud connection, rollout phone, like knowledge workers get it into maybe they need physical phones, maybe they need PA systems, tannoys, like alarm bells. Maybe it gets into SIP as well as Teams. Aaron, maybe you can kind of start us from. So I know we've got a few kind of examples we can talk about, but like it's a very different project when you get into warehouse manufacturing, back office, even retail, things like that.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to kind of define what those challenges are. So you did a pretty good job of that. The frontline worker is really what you think about when you think about like a worker on the plant floor. They're not going to have a computer in front of them as they're working on a machine. You have quality control scattered throughout the building, potentially in different places. So when you start to think about Teams as a platform, even just beyond the voice portion of it, for these types of workers specifically, what it does is it allows them to be more accessible to administration and management, because now you have that collab platform sitting on your phone. You can take IMs and potentially Teams meetings right there if needed. Not only that, but the Teams platform is extendable. So you have all of these different IoT devices that might be sitting out there in a plant monitoring things. They're monitoring equipment and processes. You could use Power BI integration to kind of trigger workflows and automations that have tickets and trigger into like CRMs or ticketing systems like Salesforce, for example, and then pump it into a Teams channel so that those quality control engineers now have that alert right there on their phone, and maybe even a link to a ticket. They also know that there's an issue. So if they're on one side of the plant, they might get that alert and then be able to triage that issue out to someone else. So even beyond just the voice capabilities that we'll talk about in a little bit, the platform itself extends itself to these workers really, really well in terms of giving them more ability to do their job.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like my mind defaults to replacing the voice scenarios, but it's interesting to think about Teams as a platform where actually, particularly like you say, automation and channels and channel messages, and then into reporting with things like Power BI can actually change the way some of those workers work. They can just check their mobile, they know what's going on. Shifts as well might be interesting for some scenarios of people coming in and out of responsibilities.
Yeah, 100%. On the plant floor, you might have a lot of phones that have existed for a long time sitting out there. Hopefully, they're not, legacy devices like analog and RJ11 and all that, or a POTS line. But even that, the Teams platform has an ability to pull those into the tenant and into the environment via the SIP gateway. So they have these shared device licenses that you can put out there. So if you have one of those just general SIP phones that is sitting on a plant floor, maybe it's compatible or certified with Teams, maybe it's not, and it's compatible with SIP Gateway. And even if it's not compatible with SIP Gateway because it's maybe a legacy analog device or POTS line that came in, you could still go and get like an Algo ATA device or one of those others, audio codes or Ribbon, for example, that are certified with SIP Gateway to kind of pull them in under your management. That way they're not hanging off on some ancillary solution that kind of starts to get into the conversation about the legacy equipment that's out there in these manufacturing environments, as overhead paging. Sometimes there's big analog solutions that require Amphenol ports and things like that. How do we cover that? Well, a lot of it can be done through Teams, again, with that SIP gateway integration or some of the out-of-the-box features that they have.
Yeah, and that's a really important point because a lot of organizations plan their ROI for Teams Phone on we're going to get rid of the PBX, the legacy maintenance cost, and then they get to these edge cases like PAs or elevator phones or alarm things. Like you say, there's a few options there. So we've got the Teams phone devices, obviously run over IP. We've got certain SIP compatible phones for Teams Gateway, but you might have like a special hardened chemical fireproof type phone scenario. So is that IP and do we put that into an SBC, or is that classic, like you say, it's a RJ11 and actually we need to terminate it to an ATA? But we've got options for all of those scenarios to meet some pretty interesting edge cases.
And I would say too, another benefit of the pure IP platform in general is the fact that you can mix and match direct routing and operator connect, which can come into play here because sometimes they might want like an SBA appliance, just a survivability appliance on site. Maybe some of those analog deployments require an SBC to be there because you need those Amphenol ports, in which case it makes sense maybe to use direct routing for the SBC as an endpoint. You can kind of mix and match what you need to do with pure IP in terms of going this way or going that way with it, and folks like me are on the call to help kind of iron that out.
Yeah, that's a big deal. There's lots of telcos who are more than ready to do the cloud to cloud stuff, the kind of, the knowledge worker, it's all easy stuff. Then when you get into, I want PA systems, I want local kit on site, local survivability. That can be a big one as well, where like certain manufacturing lines have to stop if there's no phone connectivity because of the security and health and safety risks. So like actual local survivability becomes critical because they're losing money per minute for
Yeah.
the production being down if there's no phone connectivity, as an example.
Well, and we even talked to earlier about just like the monitoring of your systems. So if your internet goes down at a site and you've got ISP1 that's down and you have that SBA on site, you can still get those alerts back and forth to your channels as needed versus if it's down, right? Not only that, but it's scalable. So globally, manufacturing doesn't just occur in any one domestic place. There are certain hotspots around the globe. So I'm in the United States. We're not just shipping devices to the lower 48. We're going all over the globe with it.
Mm.
Not only that, our PSTN services expand to over 50 countries full PSTN. So when you're picking your partners too, that's important as well. But the Teams platform itself, outside of just the pure IP pitch, is scalable. So across the globe, you'll be able to find partners that you can pull all of these services into, and that way you're kind of operating in that one unified platform, and then your vendors kind of feed into it.
How much are you seeing in these kind of scenarios? Is it people are using like a wired Teams IP phone, maybe common area? Are they using dedicated like the mobile devices, or are they using deck devices? Like there's a few different options in our
Yeah,
portfolio. Where are you seeing people lean?
I really think manufacturing kind of runs the gambit because you might have a headquarter that has knowledge workers. You're going to have plants that are scattered all over the place that have those common area devices and have the overhead paging systems that need to be integrated, and there's faxing and all of that stuff that comes up. So honestly, I think I talk about all of it, especially in the context of manufacturing. Some other verticals, not so much, but manufacturing is going to hit knowledge workers, frontline workers. You're going to have that distributed workforce that's going to have a variety of needs. And that's why I think it's so important to talk about the extensibility of the platform to make sure that people understand this can do what you need it to do. We just have to have a conversation around what you have so that we can tell you how to do it. That's essentially, I think, the biggest hurdle because Teams, let's face it, it hasn't been thought about in the telephony vein for a very long time. It's kind of the post 2020 world as people are trying to turn up licenses that it's gained traction. So you kind of fight against some of that initial inertia of, I don't know if it can do what I need it to do. And Microsoft has done a good job over the last several years of really building the platform out to get to the point where, yeah, it can hit a lot of these use cases in pretty unique ways.
And if it's a customer listening, like they might have got part way on their team journey, this is very common. Like they've done the knowledge workers, sales and marketing, front of house, but they haven't yet attacked the warehousing or manufacturing or retail. Where would you suggest they begin? Sorry, in terms of like thinking about how to scale that.
The transition story is always important. With manufacturing, we tend to run into legacy systems, right? So a lot of phone systems that are still out there on-site kind of in plants doing what they've done forever. I think when we talk about moving from one to another, I like to go with what the easiest workers to migrate would be, and that's typically going to be your knowledge workers, right? As long as you have the hardware in place that they need, like the desk phones or the headsets, it's relatively straightforward. When you start to get into the actual factory, you start talking about like especially if there's distributed analog all over the place, like one line here, one line there, you start talking about cabling needs. How can I aggregate these? So it can get a little bit more complicated once you get into the factory. So typically it's like, let's start with the migration here. We'll build a good plan to get you towards, the end state. And with pure IP, we can trunk into pretty much any system that exists out there as long as it talks SIP. So that's part of our story when we're talking to customers is saying, look, it doesn't have to be overnight. We can light up what you have today and then build a plan that gets you to where you need to as you get comfortable with the platform.
Yeah, that's nice to be able to migrate the PSTN connectivity first to get that done, and then migrate. You have much more control then about where you route things. Like you could move some lines of Teams and keep some lines on the legacy PBX, for example.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, thanks for that tour of kind of the more interesting, I think, use cases of Teams Phone in manufacturing and more complex scenarios. Really interesting to hear what the capabilities are. If people are wanting to find out more or maybe talk about their particular use cases, what's the best thing to do?
In general, if people want to learn more, they can go through our website and reach out that way or to our SE email internally here, SE email at BCM One.
Awesome, Aaron. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good one. Thanks for having me.